Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So last month my video got 3 whole likes. And my goal for today is 4 likes on this video. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hi, I'm going to explain overriding methods and why we would use them. So I have an example here. The base class is animal, and it has a virtual function called speak. But when an object of type animal is made, we don't know what sound an animal makes unless we know what type of animal it is. So it's just going to output animal makes an unknown sound. Then we have the derived class cow, which is derived from animal, and it overrides the speak function. So this is an overridden method. This is supposed to um, This is in the wrong spot. So this is the overridden method. It has the same return type, same parameters as the virtual function, but it has this override keyword here to it checks at compile time if there is a virtual function that goes with it. Um, And this has a different definition in the body. Since we know the animal is a cow now, it's going to say cow moos instead of an unknown sound. And then we did the same thing for pig. A pig's an animal and it oinks. So down here, I've created some pointers to animals and pig. The first one's the pointer to an animal, and I instantiate it with the animal constructor. So when I call speak, it's going to go to the animal class and it's going to call the speak function inside the animal class. This one's a pointer to an animal, but it's instantiated with the cow constructor. So when I call speak, it's going to go to the overridden function for the cow and say cow moos. And then this is a pointer to a pig. It's instantiated with a pig constructor. So when I call speak, it's going to say oink. So you could call speak for a derived class by declaring it as a pointer to its base class or the pointer to its derived class. That's just there. So when I run this, it should show, yeah, animal makes an unknown sound, cow moos, and pig oinks. So that works. Something else that's important is you can make this a pure virtual function by getting rid of this body and setting it equal to 0. This becomes a pure virtual function. So it has to be defined in the derived classes, and then this base class becomes an abstract class. So that means that objects of type animal can't be instantiated anymore because there's no function definition for this function. So it's purely a base class for derived classes to be made and objects to be made from the derived classes. So when I try to run this again, it should say that an animal can't be instantiated down here. So there's that error saying that object of abstract class type animal is not allowed. Now I'm going to compile and run the program. So there we go. Everything compiled. There's the menu. Um, so I'm just going to follow the example input and output on the assignment. So I'm going to start by making a new employee named Bill Plummer. Then I'm going to make another employee, coder Carol. She makes a salary. Okay, and now I'm going to compute their paychecks. So Phil Plummer makes 2,200 a week, and Carol Coder makes 1,538.46 per week. So that matches what I have here. Um, Now I'm going to raise their wages with R, and I could do capital letters for any of these or lowercase. I'm going to increase it by 4.5. So now that shows their new wages, and that matches what's on the assignment page. So then Now I can list all of them. So there's Phil and Carol. The hourly wages are updated with their new wages, and the bonus is shown if applicable. So now I'm going to show that we can add some more employees too. So I'm going to add myself. I make 18 an hour. Now if we compute the paychecks, that is how much I make every week. Um, and then I can give myself and everyone else a raise of like 10%. So that makes sense. My wage went up by $1.80. That's 10%. And then if I list all the employees, now my name's there. So everything's working as it's supposed to. And I could put Q to quit the program. Okay, now I'm gonna talk you through my code. So starting with the class employee, every employee has a first name, a last name, and an hourly pay. They have a raise wages function that takes in a percentage and increases their hourly pay by that percentage. And this function's the same for all the derived classes. There's a pure virtual function here called compute pay. It is void and doesn't take in anything. It just it's intended to output the weekly pay for an employee. But since it's a pure virtual function, it is not defined within the base class, and this base class is an abstract base class. So no objects of just employee can be made, and this function is only defined in the derived classes. So the constructor here takes a first name, a last name, an hourly pay in, and assigns them to their respective variables. There's getters and setters for all the variables since they're all private. The hourly employee inherits from employee, so it inherits all the public members of employee, which is why we needed these getter and setter methods. Um, the variable that hourly employee has that isn't in the other classes is weekly hours. So also compute pay is now overridden in this derived class. So it will calculate and display the weekly pay for an hourly employee. So the difference is that it can include overtime depending on how many weekly hours they have. So if they have less than or equal to 40 weekly hours, their pay is just going to be the straight rate that they have. And then if it's greater than 40 hours, they're going to get the pay for working full time. And then they're also going to get additional pay for any hours they worked over 40. And their overtime pay rate is going to be 1.5 times their hourly pay. And then their weekly pay is output at the end. The constructor for hourly employee calls the constructor for employee. So it takes those values, first name, last name, hourly pay, and puts them right into employee, the employee constructor. Um, and then weekly hours is a new variable, so it'll just assign weekly hours here. And then there's getters. There's a getter and a setter for weekly hours since it is a private variable. The salaried employee, this one has a bonus amount that the other employees doesn't have, so it's the yearly bonus amount. The compute pay is a little different for this one. Since there is no overtime, it's just going to say that the weekly pay is straight 40 times their hourly pay, and then output their weekly pay when it's called. The constructor takes in the first name, the last name, their annual salary, and the bonus amount. So the difference is they have an annual salary and their hourly pay is not directly input by the user. And they have a bonus amount that's added to their salary each year. So um, this constructor will still call the base class constructor and put in the first name and last name unchanged, but it's going to modify the annual salary and convert it to an hourly rate before sending it through the employee constructor. So this is all done in the argument. And then bonus amount is going to get assigned separately. There's a getter and a setter for bonus amount since it will be needed. So now for the main function, I have a do while that displays the menu continuously until Q is chosen, and there's a switch to uh, call a function that uh, is associated with each path. So I have all the functions defined starting after the classes. So right here is display menu. It just shows all the options. Here's list employees. So we pass in the vector of employees that is declared in main, and it is a vector of pointers to employees. So we can, so the employee could be either a hourly employee or a salaried employee and still go in this vector. Um, First, we have to check if there are employees in the list before we try to display them. So if the size of the vector is 0, it's going to tell you that there's no employees to list and just go back to the menu. Um, and then here we have some formatting. This is the name, hourly wages, bonus, and the little like separators under them. And then we have to go through every element of the array from index 0 to the index that is one less than the size of employees. Um, at the top, there is a pointer to an employee called current, like the cur employee that it's on, and it's going to be equal to the value at I, which is a pointer to an employee. So the first thing is to output their name, which does not require dynamic casting. Um, and then, sorry, I blinked for a second. Okay, so get hourly pay is a function that is that you can call for any employee, hourly employee, or salary employee. So there's no dynamic casting here either. We can just call the current employees hourly pay without any problems and display that. Now, when it comes to the bonus amount, we have to check if the employee is a salaried employee. So I dynamic casted the current employee to a salaried employee and set it equal to a pointer to a salaried employee. And if this is successful, then salaried cur is going to point to an object. Otherwise, it's going to be a null pointer. So this if checks if salaried cur is a null pointer. If it isn't, it's going to output the bonus pay of the employee. So um, yeah, so when I call get bonus amount for this object, it'll actually work because the object type is a salaried employee. If it just said employee, I would get an error saying that this is not a method in the employee class. And then if this turns out to be a null pointer and it's not a salaried employee, then it is an hourly employee, and we're just going to output a little dash line to show that there's no bonus amount. Um, here's the new employee function. So we pass in the vector of employees, and we're going to need their full last first name, the index in the of the comma in the input, the type of employee they are, and then depending on which type, we'll need their pay rate, weekly hours, and bonus amount. So first we have to get their name. We get it all on one line with the format last comma space first. So we need to find the index of the comma, and then we take out the substring for the last name and the first name surrounding that comma. There's a little +2 here to start after the comma and the space instead of just the comma. Um, and then we need to get their wage or salary as applicable and then create the object and add it to the vector. So first we ask for the type. If the type is hourly, then we ask for their hourly wage, That's going to go into pay rate, and we ask for their weekly hours. That's going to go weekly hours. And then we can push a new hourly employee to the back of the employees vector with those values. And then here, if they're a salaried employee, we're going to ask for their annual salary instead of their hourly wage. It's going to go into that same pay rate variable since, yeah, it's fine. And then um, the yearly bonus amount goes here. So then we can push the salaried employee onto the vector with these values. And yeah, we're able to declare this as a new employee inside the parentheses because it's going to return an address. And this is a vector of pointers. So we're passing in an address of an employee. And then if the type isn't right, it's going to have an error message here and make you try again. Um, we have a function to compute paychecks. So um, this will take the vector of employees. It's going to go through each employee in the vector, and it's just going to call the compute pay. It's going to output their first name and last name so we know who they are, and then just call the compute pay function. So that already takes care of a lot of the formatting and the math behind it, and we covered those earlier. Um, and then we have a function to compute and display the raised wages for all the employees. So when we call this function, we pass in the employees vector again, and it's going to ask how much the percentage increases for the raise. Here's some formatting stuff. And then going through each employee in the vector, um, we're going to set the pointer of the current employee to the one at that index, and then say their first name, last name, and then okay, I'm back. I just had to cough. Um, So for each employee, we're going to call the raise wages function in the employee class and pass in the percent raise from the user input. Uh, we have to check if their salary, so the same strategy as before, if this is a null pointer or not. And that's going to indicate whether we're going to display their how much money they make per year or per hour. And then here in the main function, this is where that vector of employees is declared. There's a character option. It's going to loop over and over again, displaying the menu, taking in the user's option. I was getting an error before because the new line at the end of option messed up. It like stayed in the input buffer, and then when I tried to like take in the get line later for the name, it it still had that in there and it kept like getting an error. But putting the C in ignore seemed to fix it. And then I have a switch here. I do to lower the option so that it's not case sensitive. So then case N is going to call the new employee function we went over. C is going to call compute paychecks. R will call raise wages. L will list employees. And Q will give a little message saying that the program's quitting and then end it. And then the default is if the command isn't any of those, it's gonna just loop again. So this will loop while the option is not Q, and then once Q is entered, it's going to end.